And you're live on YouTube.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's Planning Committee. First of all, I want to give a general introduction and to say that we are recording the meeting and the recording will be available on the Council's website following the meeting. This meeting is being streamed live on the Council's YouTube channel and the link is provided on the Council's website. Please note that any comments posted on the chat feed of the Council's YouTube channel during the recording of this meeting will not be monitored by the Council. All mobile devices should be switched off or set to silent so that the meeting is not interrupted by ringtones. Please switch your profile to mute unless you are speaking. The procedure for each item: the planning officer will present their report and the committee members will be asked for points of clarification. The planning officer will then read out any written statements received from members of the public on a particular item. The meeting will be adjourned to enable those who have given notice that they wish to address the committee on a particular application to do so. Each person will be invited to join the meeting via Zoom and will have 3 minutes to give their views. Once all comments have been given, the meeting will be reconvened for members of the committee to discuss the application and reach a decision. Thank you. Okay, can we start with apologies for absence, please?
Yes, we have Councillor Don Morris substituting for Councillor Rima, and apologies for absence received from Councillor McPherson Davies. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do we have any declarations of interest? No? Thank you. We'll move on to item agenda 3, the minutes from the last meeting. Can I please ask members to unmute themselves so I can come around and ask you whether or not you accept them as a true record of the last meeting? I'll vote in favour. Councillor McGeorge. Can you unmute yourself, Mel? Sorry. Was that okay, Kemi? No. Mel, can you just say it again? She couldn't hear you.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Right. 4.
We'll go again. Thank you. Coyote. Oh, sorry, Councillor Adrian.
4.
Councillor Turner.
Yep, 4.
Councillor Carol Morris.
4.
And Councillor Don Morris.
Abstain.
Thank you. And with that, the minutes have carried. We'll now move on to planning, on to item agenda 4, and I will hand you over to our officers.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. So this item relates to a planning application considered at Planning Committee on the 22nd of September, whereby members resolved to grant planning permission for the proposed development, which was at Sunnydean. It was the demolition of an existing bungalow and buildings and the erection of 5 bungalows. In accordance with protocol, the proposed planning conditions have been brought back to Planning Committee for members to agree. The conditions are set out in full on pages 8 and 9 of the agenda pack and are standard conditions relating to the time period to commence the development within, a list of approved drawings, details of external materials, details of hard and soft landscaping, details of foul and surface water drainage, the removal of permitted development rights, details of finished floor levels, details of the means of enclosure such as fences, walls and gates, and a final condition requiring the vehicle parking areas to be constructed prior to occupation of the dwellings. So those conditions are with members for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any members have points of clarification? No, with that, I'll open it up for discussion. Do any members wish to speak on this item? No? Okay, with that then, I will take this item to the vote. The recommendation can be found on page 16 of your agenda. I vote 4. Could you unmute yourself, please, so I can then take your votes? Councillor McGeorge,
4,
Councillor Adrian,
4.
Councillor Turner,
Against.
Councillor Carol Morris,
against,
Councillor Don Morris.
Against.
And therefore, I vote for with my casting vote. Thank you. We'll now move on to item agenda 5. And again, I'll hand back to our officers. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Chairman. It relates to the Limpston site, Burton Mills Road. If you go to the next slide. So it just shows the site. The site is on the north side of Burton Mills Road, opposite its junction with Tenterfields in the Burton Mills area of Basildon. The site is an irregular shape, as you can see, contains a number of buildings. On the east side, there's a single-storey building which had a number of shop units, now vacant, together with a small local social club, which again is vacant. Roughly in the centre of the site is a detached chalet, and to the northwestern part of the site is a large car parking area. The surrounding area, as you can see, is kind of like two distinct areas. To the south, you've got housing development, mix of houses, some flats, whilst to the north, you've got the Burton Mills Industrial Estate with the mix of industrial warehouse units, whilst directly to the west, you've got this treed landscape buffer strip, which splits the two areas in half. If you go to the next slide, it's just a few slides showing the actual site itself. So various views. You've got the kind of treed area at the top left-hand corner. Coming down to the bottom, then you've got a view from the west of the small shop units. Centrally is the adjoining industrial commercial unit, which is kind of a big brickwork building with a hipped roof. I'll come on to that later. Then just got the various views of the shop units in the right-hand corner. So go to the next slide, please. So this is the proposed layout. So that this latest scheme follows on from two previous proposals for the site for flats on the site itself. This latest scheme sees revisions to the design of the building, slight changes to the layout. This follows clarification on the extent of the site. It's slightly being reduced along the western and northern parts of the boundary, as well as a slight area in the southeast corner, which is actually a highway. There have also been some changes to the developer's preference in terms of the styling of the buildings. So the scheme, it says, for 48 units. There'd be a smaller block on the western side, as you can see, that would contain 15 units, with the larger block containing 33 units. The smaller block would be set out as affordable housing units as part of the requirement in our local plan policy. To the rear of the site and adjacent to the access road would be the parking, rough 83 parking spaces, with the access to the site modified to meet the relevant highway standards. The design of them would be as set out in the next slide. This is, as you can see there, a more kind of traditional design, predominantly brick to the elevations with some rendered elements and some gabled features, together with open balconies attached to the north and south sides of the building, with a hipped tiled roof. That shows block A, which is a smaller block. The next slide, which shows the larger one, very similar in design. The kind of central elevation slide on the left-hand side is the frontage of the block itself. The next slide would show the street scene as it intended to be. You can see the smaller block on the west side with the access through the middle. So as mentioned, if you go to the next slide, as mentioned earlier, The scheme has been subject of a couple of previous proposals. The last of those was as shown on this slide. The previous scheme was again for 48 units, but in a slightly more contemporary design with this kind of sawtoothed sort of roof line and more predominantly render in finish. So the latest one follows and it's a similar kind of layout to that previously shown, and the next slide would show a comparative layout plan. I don't know if you can see it all clearly, but the red dotted lines on the plan are the previous layout of the two blocks, with the slightly grayer one behind that or underneath that are the latest layout. So there's very similar positions of the two blocks themselves. It's just that they've had to move some of the outer buildings, the kind of bike store and the refuse buildings slightly further into the site than they had originally proposed, and some of the balcony areas in the southeast corner have had to be rejigged to take account of the changes to the boundaries. In terms of the heights of the buildings, the next slide shows the comparison between the proposed and the previous approved schemes. You can see there's very little in terms of changes in the actual height of the buildings themselves. So if you go to the next slide, and we just go through the various issues and say, firstly, in terms of the principle of the scheme, as mentioned, the committee have accepted the site as being suitable for a residential development, and that was up to 48 units. So it's similar to that proposed in this scheme. So the main changes are to do with the appearance of the actual buildings themselves and just some small tweaks within the site, its boundary and its layout. Proposed changes, as you've seen, give it a more traditional design. It's not felt to be out of keeping with the general character of the area. The joining building to the east, the kind of commercial building, has got some brick features very similar to those shown on the proposed buildings themselves. It has a more, say, traditional design with tiled roof rather than the kind of sawtooth roof previously proposed. Distances from neighbouring properties is very similar to that previously, and is well in excess of what we would normally expect to be seen for a scheme of this scale. The roadway to the south helps to provide a good separation from the properties in Bradley Green. In terms of the actual impact on occupiers, as before, the scheme will have adequate noise protection measures, acoustic fence to the northern boundary with appropriate double glazing, and to the proposed flats themselves, and that's been accepted by our environmental health officers. In terms of the size of accommodation on the site, it will meet the relevant space standards set in national standards, as well as having amenity space for each of the units in the form of either balcony areas or a patio area to the ground floor flats. In terms of parking, the proposal, as I had mentioned earlier, has 83 spaces, which would meet the relevant car parking standards, and includes the appropriate level of visitor spaces as well. The highways are happy with that level provision, and the proposed modifications to the access road as well. So no objections have been received from any neighbouring occupiers, and all the statutory consultees have confirmed they are happy with the proposal, subject to either various conditions or requirement of appropriate contributions. So in terms of infrastructure associated with the proposal, as mentioned earlier, the proposal includes 15 affordable units, which would meet the relevant local plan requirement. The applicants have also agreed to meet a requirement in terms of financial contributions towards healthcare facilities, open space improvements in the local area, as well as a contribution towards the Essex Coastal recreational avoidance and mitigation strategy. So in conclusion, so the proposal makes good use of this underused so brownfield site, as well as having limited impact on neighbouring properties, little in terms of overlooking or loss of privacy, has adequate car parking provision, and meets the general objectives of the NPPF and the council's relevant local plan policies, and therefore recommended for approval to the committee, subject to completion of a legal agreement covering the various contributions of the affordable housing provision, as well as the various conditions as set out at the end of the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I just ask the senior governors to just check the note I've just sent them regarding?
Yes, I've seen it and I've sent
in
it to
the meeting,
legal.
please?
Yeah.
And I'll come back
Yes,
to-
I'll
okay.
be responding shortly.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Okay. At this point, I'd like to ask committee members if anybody has points of clarification to ask officers. I don't see any hands raised, so I'm presuming not. So at this point, we will adjourn the meeting to allow those members of the public to speak. I believe we have one member of the public. Thank you. Points of clarification to ask officers. Are you
Laura,
able to connect with them? Thank you.
yes, could you close your YouTube channel? It's causing a feedback.
Does that
The
stop now?
YouTube, yes, okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. You'll have 3 minutes to be able to address the committee. When you've got 30 seconds to go, you'll have a little beep, and I'll remind you that you need to start winding up. So
Okay.
over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, members. Thank you for the
Okay,
opportunity.
ready for the clock?
Yeah, okay. Good evening, members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Stratton Parker are the planning consulting acting on behalf of Marden Homes. Marden Homes are a local mid-tier developer who have delivered numerous high quality and bespoke schemes in Essex and the wider South East area. They pride themselves on providing developments with a luxury finish alongside exemplary customer service from the entire team. You will be aware that the council has previously considered 2 similar proposals for this site as acceptable, and thus the principle of its development has previously been established. The most recent scheme received a resolution to grant subject to a 106 agreement in December 2018, and the proposals before you this evening are very similar in comparison. This new application proposes the resiting of the 2 buildings very slightly to account for a red line and respective ownership discrepancy identified when the site was transferred between developers. The roof line has also been simplified and the fenestration strategy reviewed to prevent excessive window detailing and to also allow for improved sailor gain on balconies. Maximum building heights and the developed footprint of the site will remain the same as that previously accepted. Otherwise, the scheme continues to provide car and cycle parking in accordance with Essex parking standards, refuse storage, private and shared amenity spaces, and a landscape enhancement scheme that will include for new tree planting and ensure a biodiversity net gain for the site. A scheme of noise mitigation in the form of acoustic fencing, specialised glazing, and a specific ventilation strategy has been accepted by the Council's Environmental Health Officer. Essex County Council Highways also support the scheme in respect of its parking provision and vehicle tracking. There are no outstanding objections from consultees. Whilst the delivery of the site has experienced delays before, Marden Homes are committed to the timely delivery now, should the revised scheme be approved. Agreement on the draft Section 106 is expected in a matter of days, having been prepared alongside the Council's legal team. This will ensure contributions to public open space, local medical services, and Essex RAMS to a combined total of over £39,000. The agreement will also commit Marden Homes to a provision of 15 affordable units in full compliance with the relevant policy. Additional assessments in terms of contamination have been completed beyond that previously to further ensure that any site risks have been identified and accounted for at an earlier stage. We hope that the updated scheme presents an improved version of that previously considered acceptable, and that this, along with the increased certainty in terms of the delivery of the site that Marden Homes are able to offer, will allow you to agree with your officer's recommendation to approve the development in the interest of delivering new homes on previously developed land in a sustainable location. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now reconvene the meeting so that the councillors who wish to speak on the item may do so. Do I have any councillors wishing to comment on this item?
I didn't hear that, but I assume I've been allowed to speak.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah, Councillor Carol Morris. Yeah, we're having some technical hicks. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, well, as has been said, this has already been agreed in most of the details. I'd just like to say that I think that the new design, the more traditional design, I think is better. Otherwise, yes, I think, yeah, it's the same as it was before. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillor wishing to speak this particular item? Well, with that, then I will take this to the vote. If you could please all unmute so I can come round you and ask you for your vote. The recommendation is set out on page 15 and 16 of your agenda. I vote in favour of the recommendation. Councillor McGeorge.
For.
Councillor Aaron.
For.
Councillor Turner.
Against.
Councillor Carol Morris.
In favour.
Councillor Don Morris.
In favour.
And Councillor Kettle.
In favour.
Thank you. And with that, planning permission is granted. We'll now move on to our agenda item 6. And again, I'd like to pass this back to officers in order to hear the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, and evening committee. Item 6 on your agenda this evening is not far from the site you've just been looking at, but it's actually within the Burnt Mills Industrial Estate to the north of there. It's Unit 9 Harvey Road in Basildon, on the southern side of Harvey Road. It used to be used by the former meatpacking company, but it's now been used by a business called Retail Edge, who have moved into the site and wish to expand the site. If you can go to the next slide, that'd be great. Thank you. So as I said, it's on the southern side of Harvey Road, amongst other industrial and commercial premises. They wish to extend the property to the building to the sides and to the rear so that they can create additional warehouse space and more storage. They can improve and relocate the offices within the building, and then they want to create some improvements to the design and appearance of the site by recladding it and basically giving it a more uniform appearance than the piecemeal additions that it's had in the past. The site was, as I said, was previously used by a meat packing factory, and they also needed at that time refrigeration containers and a security cabin at the front of the site, which are quite unsightly, and they will be removed as part of these proposals. As you can see on the proposed site plan there, you've got the blue areas are the additional warehouse extensions that they wish to construct, and the green areas where the office is going to be relocated to. They want to basically improve this storage facility so that they're a company that sell toys and different retail items. They have a busy period during the Christmas week, leading up to Christmas weeks. So they will operate daily between 9 AM and 8 PM during those busy weeks. But normally it would be within weekdays, 9 till 6. There's 2 existing access points you can see to the north from Harvey Road, which lead into the site, which are to remain and to stay as they are. They will be utilised for access. As you all know, the NPPF is very supportive of encouraging the economy and building a strong economy by enabling businesses to diversify and to expand when they need to. And it's very supportive of sustainable economic development and also good design as well when a company wants to improve the appearance of their site. So this development is very kind of in keeping with that. in terms of enabling this existing business to be able to expand and improve their facilities and their efficiency from this site. As I said, it will also removed some unsightly elements like I don't know if you can see on the right hand side photo there, you've got the large refrigeration container that projects out at the front of the site there. All that is to be, and the storage containers are to be removed, and also the security cabin to the left there, which will enable the parking areas to be formally laid out properly at the front of the site. So there'll be the provision of 13 vehicle parking spaces. They're also going to incorporate 14 cycle spaces on site. The proposal is in accordance with local plan policies. We do encourage this type of development in our industrial estates, and it will enable this business to be able to keep providing jobs for this site. We've gone out to consultation to all the neighbouring premises in the area, and we've had no responses back. The Highway Authority are happy with the layout of the parking and the access arrangements and have raised no objections subject to standard conditions. And Environmental Health have also looked at the submitted contamination report that's been done, and they've asked for an investigative condition as standard on the scheme to ensure that there is no issue there. But they've raised no objection subject to that condition. So it's before members this evening as an improved site with a new parapet roof and extensions to the side and rear, and a tidy up basically of the site with formal parking and access arrangements there. So it's before you as recommended for approval, as it's in accordance with the NPPF and our saved policies. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Can I ask members, does anybody have any points of clarification they wish to ask our officers at this time? No? With that, I will open it up to members. If any member wishes to speak on this item. I do. Oh, Councillor Carol Morris.
Well, I'd just like to say it makes a change in an industrial area for people to want to actually continue to have industry. So many times we're being asked to convert industry into further housing. These people, even though they need homes, also need jobs. So yeah, it's good that it's staying as industrial.
Thank you. And I would like to echo that obviously in Basel at the moment, we are trying to support businesses, and this definitely is a business that wants to expand and wants to enable jobs to continue there and wants to improve the site that they're on at the moment, and I will be supporting this. Any other councillor wishing to speak? Well, with that, I will take this to the vote. The recommendation is on page 46, I believe, of your agendas. I'll be voting in favour. Councillor McGeorge.
In favour.
Councillor Adi-Aaron.
In favour.
Councillor Turner.
For.
Councillor Carol Morris.
In favour.
Councillor Don Morris. Don, can you unmute yourself, please? Sorry.
Yeah, for.
And Councillor Kettle.
In favour.
Thank you. And with that, planning permission is granted. That takes us on to our final item agenda tonight, which is the planning appeals and enforcement action update. Can I hand us back over to our officers for that, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. So this is an update for the September period of enforcement action and appeals that we've received. So this is for members to note if they have any questions or queries on any of the items. They're welcome to contact me now or after at the meeting. So yeah, this is just for noting, really. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we've come to an end of our planning committee meeting. I appreciate you all in attendance. Could I please ask that Charles and just hangs on for 2 minutes at the end of the meeting, please, if that would be okay. Thank you. And thank you for your attendance. Good night.
Good night.
All right.
Good night.
Thank you.
Was that me as well?
Yeah, sorry, Christine. Yeah, just for like 2 seconds, I just want to ask you a question about the stuff you sent me this afternoon. And I thought, because we should go quickly, I might be able to grab you for 5 minutes. Is Coyote still on? Oh,
Sorry,
yeah, you're allowed to go home. Well, you are home, but you know what I mean. You're allowed to go and live your life. Yeah,
Sorry,
see.
I'll leave now. Cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
Yeah, just really quickly, I had a quick read through the blurb stuff you sent this afternoon, not very thoroughly because it was just before this meeting.